Hello and welcome to the Football Diary podcast brought to you by the Sports Social Network. We are here to talk about England after two non-events, really, if we're honest. Obviously, we lose to Greece and then go on to beat Finland 3-1. And it looks like it probably spells the end of Lee Carsley, or at least we're kind of confirmed that he's not going to have a long-term future with us. And wasn't a lot to write home about, was there, Dave? So much so that Mike couldn't be bothered to join us for this one. So it's just me and you unpicking the bones of England. What did you make of the whole thing overall? Were you happy with the performances you saw, at least in the second game? Or was this kind of a non-event, a non-starter for you as well?
The first game was obviously a tough watching itself. The second one as well. I think the fans probably expected a little bit more. Even Carsley said, didn't he, before the game, he's expecting a response. And I think even though they came out after the game, obviously they liked it, Jack Grealish, it felt like the mood was a little bit, neither here or there. It was almost as though, yes, they got the win, but they felt like they should do better. And I think you could sense that in the mood, like in the interviews after the game.
But the mood's going to be neither here nor there when you don't really know what you're playing for. That's always the thing with an interim manager, isn't it? Like, they don't know if they're going to be at the next camp. They don't know who's going to be there. So it's probably quite hard to motivate yourself for these fixtures, isn't it?
It is, but then I think I was trying to think about the winners, like of coming out of
like
this,
who's come off in a good light,
fixtures, who's come out with a fair bit of credit, and I'm struggling to think of probably more than four maybe.
So what? Angel Gomez,
Jack Grealish, yeah,
Grealish definitely, yeah. Gomez, Grealish,
Declan Rice, I think he's played very well. To be fair,
yeah, but he's always in good standing.
You kind of expect that. Dean Henderson obviously came in the second game. I'm sure he will be delighted to have got that opportunity.
Yeah.
Trent
the other one for me.
Isn't it interesting to see him start on the left side, obviously against Finland. I think that raised a few eyebrows there, but also highlights. I think we're struggling to get anyone in there fit as well. But I just wanted a little bit more, and I think the likes of Cole Palmer, I was really disappointed with him over the two games. I just thought he lacked conviction in his play. There was no intensity to make something happen. It was just so flat, I think, on the whole, and I think that summed up the team, especially. I don't think we had a second shot on target until about just before the 60th minute.
It's crazy. Do you know what? I think that was the big conversation point for me. We've got this incredible pool of talent in the attacking areas now. And that kind of the three that would sit behind a striker. We've talked about it a lot. We've got now, really, Saka, Foden, Palmer, Bellingham, and Grealish. I think you can still put in that bracket. I mean, I think he's probably been the best player under Carsley. And then you've kind of got the level below that are knocking on the door, likes of Eze and Bowen and Anthony Gordon. You've got so much talent, but shoehorning them all in doesn't work. We saw that against Greece, didn't we? They aren't all going to operate together. And you probably think you're going to have to start making some quite difficult choices. So what's the choice, Dave? Like, what's the best attacking lineup England have got with those players?
I think we saw, especially in this Finland game, is that we struggled for movement in behind. There wasn't many occasions. I think that was the only one I can think of, was where Grealish made that that clever run in behind off the back of a brilliant assist from Angel Gomez, which we don't see too much of. Like, we want to see players being trusted more in those positions. I think playing, if you see it a lot with Man City, I think you see it a lot with Arsenal. Their players trust each other and they'll play into each other, even though they know they've got a couple of them round them. They trust them to be on the half turn and just play it round the corner, or they've got the technique to be able to handle that kind of situation. I don't think we put our players into that sort of circumstance enough for England. But that was a perfect example of it. I think Gomez dealing with that situation, and we don't see them kind of assists too often. I think the kind of player that he and the profile that he has is completely different to what we've got elsewhere in the squad.
You've done a bit of a Lee Carsley there, Dave. I asked you to pick three of our attacking players, and you just avoided doing that and just talked about Angel Gomez instead, which is basically what Carsley did against Greece. He didn't want to pick, so he was just like, hey, look at this shiny new thing instead.
Well, I did want to talk about, I think Harry Kane's I think it's a problem position.
Dave, let's get to Harry Kane in a minute. Answer my question, Dave. Who are you picking? I think that's the thing. You know that Kane is going to be the number 9 until he's not. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because I do think it's a valid conversation to have, particularly when you've got other options now that we probably didn't have before. But you have to think about what complements this system, and trying to play Foden, Palmer, Bellingham, Saka all together isn't going to work. So how do you do it?
I think we know that Saka's going to start on that right side, and I think I would put him in there.
He's the number 1 for me.
I think there's a question mark on that left-hand side. I still don't know if we know what the answer is to that. But also, the problem with that centre-forward position, if Harry Kane's in there, like we saw it in this Finland game, he just drops too often, and there's nobody making these runs in behind. And you saw with the third goal, Ollie Watkins makes that movement in behind, sets the goal up.
Yeah.
It's just such a contrast, I think.
So does that affect who you want behind if you've got Kane being that deep? Does that mean that you need to think about a more advanced winger on the left?
Yeah, I think so. I think I saw something saying it's been 14 games since we had a left winger score, and that was Marcus Rashford.
It's not happening, mate.
It's difficult, and it's also difficult to see what kind of balance they're trying to get. And I think also it's going to be interesting in whatever coach does come in, because I think we've kind of accepted that Lee Carsley's probably not going to get the position. And I've seen the names, the likes of Thomas Tuchel mentioned. An interesting one, Roy Keane obviously mentioned this in the studio. Go and get Pep. You know, if you're getting somebody in. I've been thinking about it today. I'm wondering, I don't think Pep would play Kane in that position, because I don't think he offers enough off the ball. If you look at the likes of Erling Haaland, you know, he might be involved little to not a lot, to be honest, in certain games. But the movement that he offers, the pace and behind, he can press as well. Kane's not really that kind of forward anymore.
So that's the problem, isn't it?
It's the mobility, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got probably the best generation of attacking talent England have produced in decades. Absolute decades. Obviously, in the 90s, they had like this plethora of number 9s that were all fantastic, and you could only pick a couple of them. And now it's getting to the point where actually everyone in that attacking third is so good, but there isn't necessarily a complementary system that suits all of them and brings the best out. And I wonder if actually the biggest casualty of that is probably Phil Foden, who's this kind of maverick player who's capable of moments of incredible brilliance. And we all kind of expected to be England's talisman and the one that we've built the team around. But actually, I think we've seen repeatedly that he's not really stood up in an England shirt, and there might be better uses of those attacking positions. I'll be honest, Saka is the first one on the team sheet for me. I think that's really obvious. I think it's really hard to argue against playing Cole Palmer right now. I think Bellingham obviously is helped by the fact that he naturally can play deeper, so could play in the midfield alongside Rice, and that kind of gets him in there. And now I look at that left-hand side, and I think it's Grealish is to lose again. Yeah. Because he's experienced. He understands the movement very well in that final third of not just himself, but those around him. I think he brings better play out of players around him, and I don't think Foden's achieved that in an England shirt yet. So I wonder if actually it might be that we have to start rotating Palmer and Foden as the number 10 more often. Is that viable?
Yeah, and it's, you know, there's a lot of talk saying we've not had that kind of form from Phil Foden that he's shown in a Man City shirt. Whether another coach would be able to get that out of him, you know, that's another question. And I suppose it's who you building that side around. The problem is that, like you say, there's so many good players that can you afford to build that entire team around one player just to fit them into the team?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not. Yeah. Like you mentioned Bellingham. I do think Grealish, I think he's tied that spot down on the left-hand side for the foreseeable, and depending who comes in. But I think what Grealish does give you on that left-hand side, it gives you that kind of control. You can keep a hold of the ball, recycle possession, and actually for England, he looks far more dangerous than he does for Man City.
Yeah, he does.
For me, he just looks so much more incisive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the big thing for him, isn't it? He looks confident in an England shirt. He's more experienced now as well at the kind of top level, and that's something that they'll definitely want to bring. And whoever the new manager is will want to get the most out of. Can we have a quick conversation about Ollie Watkins? Because the Greece game, we elected to not play a number 9 when Kane was out. That was a very interesting strategy. Obviously, Watkins comes on, gets an assist, which is good to see. That's something we know he's got in his locker. We saw last season, led the way in the Premier League for assists. And then in the second game, we get Harry Kane back, still not 100% fit, but we've seen that a million times, haven't we, Dave? Harry Kane being thrown onto the pitch when he's not fit. Again, Watkins comes on, has a huge impact, gets an assist. Thomas Solanke's sat on the bench as well. What's it going to take to rotate that option? Would we be better off with a player like Watkins as the number 9 now? It feels like a harsh conversation to have about Harry Kane because he's undoubtedly one of the best strikers in world football still. But it does feel like with this current crop of players, he just might not be the right answer. Is that a weird thing to say about probably our best ever goal scorer?
I think there will definitely come to a point where there's going to be a point where we have to phase him out of it, I feel, because like you say, that there are so many options in there, the likes of, Solanke didn't get an opportunity, last time round. He's shown that he can come in and do a job and play a sort of similar kind of role to Harry Kane, in my opinion. He's probably quite similar kind of player. And you mentioned Watkins. He can play. We've seen him play off the left for Villa, like in the past. Like that's not really the kind of role that he plays for Villa now. But
yeah, it couldn't.
You looked at the assist. He did come in on that off of that left hand side, didn't he? But I don't think you want him. I don't think you want him there. You want him linking play. Like he can, can come in and hold play up. And I just think he offers so much threat in behind, and it's something that we were sorely lacking for, the majority of the 2 games until he actually came in. I think Noni Madueke actually, looked a threat as well.
Yeah, he did.
And they just offered that kind of. They didn't really look like they feared us actually until they came on. They brought an unpredictable nature, I think, to the game, and like you say, is he going to get that opportunity? And it's going to, like you say, if whoever comes in next, the decision's going to be down to them, and it's going to be a similar, I think, situation. Like for instance, I likened it to the Ronaldo situation, like with Ten Hag when he dropped him.
It'll be a big deal.
The good of the team, really.
Portugal haven't taken that idea, though, have they? It's funny, isn't it? Like Watkins, I feel like has done. He can't do any more. Like he had a sensational season with Aston Villa last year. He's now playing Champions League football and he's been fantastic. He's produced big moments for England, obviously gotten through to the final with that goal in the semi-final. And it's weird because Carsley not picking him in that first game was probably cost him the opportunity of keeping the job. And that's bizarre to me. I think it's interesting that he's probably not as favourable as some of the players that we talked about in the first half of the pod. It does seem like Carsley's done now. His comments are really interesting. He said that the job deserves like a world-class manager who has pedigree and has gone and done it. Very interesting timing that those comments have come out at the same time as Thomas Tuchel is being really heavily linked. What do you make of the idea of Tuchel for England?
I think it's a fascinating one. Obviously, there's some players in there who've played under him for Chelsea. There's a couple of players who are on in the squad at the minute, like Mason Mount. And they've
dreaming, Davey, and getting back.
But I just think he's definitely a tournament manager. Look what he did with Chelsea, won the Champions League that year again. That final against City, really impressive performance. And I think if you're looking at a boss who potentially you're not looking at long term, because let's be honest, he's probably been around for 2 or 3 years. I think he obviously didn't last very long at Bayern Munich as well. But I think the kind of football that he plays, very meticulous in his approach. I think it will really suit tournament football. I think it'd be a good option.
Better option than Pep?
Let's be honest. Well,
if that is an option, which I'm still laughing at. I think it's ridiculous, the idea that we're even talking about Pep Guardiola for the England job. I can't see him ever taking that. But it's not going away as a rumour.
I mean, probably the most difficult job in international football, because you look at the pressure of it,
the expectations,
the amount of
so
time
high.
that it's been since we actually won anything.
Yeah,
I think as a manager coming into that role, you're probably cementing your legacy. And if anything, I think there's always people questioning certain things, like the resources that he's had at Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Manchester City. You know, he's had Lionel Messi at Barcelona, the best player, and he's had the best midfielders available to him. If he came into that England job and won something with it, I think that would silence the very few critics that are probably left out there.
Is it a comment on how Lee Carsley has done that he's not really being considered right now, or is there a world where we do stick with Lee Carsley?
I don't think it's the right decision. Mainly, and he said himself, didn't he? It was like he's not at the stage where he's won trophies and he's got that on his resume to put forward. He's on the pathway to doing that. I think he contradicted himself a little bit after the game, though, because he came out and they basically said, "Do you feel like you're not ready for it?" And he was like, "That's not what I'm saying." So
yeah, it was weird, wasn't it?
I can't work out where his head's at with it. Saying he didn't officially apply for the role either. So
bizarre.
I just don't know whether he probably doesn't want to put any pressure on himself in the situation and kind of put it out there that, you know, he wants it, etc.
I think it can't be him. I think the worrying thing is when he was having those comments about it has to be a world-class manager, it has to be someone that's going to win something. Like, I don't disagree with that. But the options available to England of people that have done that, well, there aren't any, really. Obviously, you have the idea of going for a foreign manager, which obviously has its own drawbacks, and there's things that people will feel about that. But if you're looking at the pool of English coaches right now, okay, you can go and get Graham Potter. He's never really done anything. If you could go and get Eddie Howe, he's done a good job at Newcastle, but he's never won anything. There's nothing to say that anyone is going to go into this England role and be successful in it.
I mean, we've gone down
than with Southgate, really.
We've gone down that route, haven't we, already? You know, we're promoted from the under-21s, you know, Southgate when he was in charge of the under-21s.
And we got close, though, Dave.
Didn't really have a resume sort. You know, he got Middlesbrough relegated. Hasn't done anything at club level. So we've explored that avenue already. I think we need somebody in with, you know, some pedigree.
We've done that too. What was Capello? It's true though, isn't it? That's what Capello was supposed to be.
Yeah,
and that didn't work. Are we gonna make the same mistake? I can't see Tuchel. I'll be honest. As good as a coach as Tuchel may be, the way he is on a personal level and the way that he kind of disrupts anywhere he goes, I can't see international management being for him. And that short space of time he gets with camps, I feel like that would just be a nightmare. Imagine if you're a City player and you've got Guardiola coaching you at club level, and then you go to international break where it's meant to be this happy camp, and you've got Thomas Tuchel there. Mate, my head's fried. I'm not playing there. I think it's a nightmare idea, but I don't know who I want. I think we've really seen the end of an era with England now as well. Obviously, Southgate going was always going to spell like a new system and new players coming through. But actually, I feel like watching Carsley's couple of games and thinking, right, we are looking for a new manager, really spelt out the end of it. Like, there's a generation of players now that I think we need to look back on and go, yeah, they're done with England. And actually, it's kind of sad. Like, a nostalgic point of view, like, there's questions over Jordan Pickford, who's been an ever-present for Southgate and has done so much for England. I think he's one of the best goalkeepers England have had, to be honest. Obviously, Kyle Walker, there's a question about his age. Trippier's gone. Harry Maguire's definitely gone. Yeah, we won't see him again. Sure, you never really know. That's going to be a weird one. And then there are other players that contributed so much to England over the last sort of 10 years that I don't know if we ever gave them enough credit. Like, we laugh at Eric Dyer. Like, Dele Alli looked like he was going to get 100+ caps at one point. And now we're talking about Cole Palmer, and it could go the same way. Who knows? Sterling, absolutely vital to what Southgate was able to achieve. Rashford's probably gone now as well. So everything feels really unknown with England all of a sudden. And I think the fact that we don't know who the next manager is going to be and there isn't an obvious candidate meant that these fixtures were always going to be a bit of a weird point in our kind of journey with England now. And the fact that we're in Nations League Group B and we're not winning every game, and I'm just worried about the lack of direction right now. If you'd given it to Carsley, at least then you can say, right, this is what the FA's plan always was. We were always looking at succession from Southgate. But actually, the fact that they're scrambling around now trying to identify a target and they're going for club managers that happen to be available now, it tells me the FA never had a plan. And it was obvious that no matter what happened, Southgate was going to leave the job at the end of the last tournament. I think that was so clear. I don't think there could have been any outcome where he stayed on afterwards. So you knew, and now we're talking to Thomas Tuchel, who happens to be available. Oh, I don't know how that sits for me.
Well, when do we hear? Well, when's the appointment?
Who knows?
That's the thing.
Who knows? Who knows, Dave? But whenever it happens, we'll talk about it on the pod. Nice and short one for us this week, really. That's what happens in the international break. But we'll be back next week to talk about the Premier League being back. I can't wait to see Villa get back underway, obviously.
I can wait.
Missed it. You probably can wait. We talked beforehand about United's inevitable 1 minute goal conceded as they face Brentford at the weekend. So we'll see how that goes. See if Mike's brave enough to come back and talk about that. But thank you for being with us this week in the international break. Hopefully it's not all doom and gloom with England. Please continue to support the channel. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can follow us on all socials and us individually as well. Our little apps will be on there too. In the meantime, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
I'll speak to you
soon. Lovely weekend of Premier League now to look forward to.
Mate, we all need it. Enjoy it, everyone. Thank you.